For his role in thwarting a Skrull invasion, Norman Osborn has been handed the keys to the proverbial kingdom. He took over leadership of S.H.I.E.L.D., reforming it into Hammer. He also reformed his former Thunderbolts team into a new version of the Avengers. But these aren't the bright, shiny pinnacles of heroism we think of when it comes to Marvel's premier team. Unbeknownst to the general public, this is a team of supervillains and anti-heroes in disguise. This is the Dark Avengers. Hey everybody, welcome to the #1 Comics Podcast. I'm Jonah. With me is Bill. Hello, Bill.
Hey Jonah, how's it going?
I'm doing well, thank you. Good. And this is the only podcast dedicated to review and discussion of first issues. And today we are talking about Dark Avengers. This was almost peak Marvel for me. Mm-hmm. When I go back to, when I think back in time to my comic collecting, and my level of being a fan was probably peak around this time.
Okay.
So I was super excited to be talking about this book in particular. Again, It's Dark Avengers that we're looking at, published by Marvel Comics, cover date March 2009, cover price $3.99. Writer on this, Brian Michael Bendis. Artist, Mike Deodato Jr. Deodato, I believe, did the inks on this as well. Now, following the Secret Invasion event, the original real Avengers disbanded. The members either went into hiding or they were conspiring against Norman Osborn, who at this point had risen to power. The former Green Goblin has assembled this fake team consisting of Captain Marvel, a.k.a. Novar, the Sentry, whom we've talked about previously, Miss Marvel, a.k.a. Moonstone from Thunderbolts, Ares, the God of War, Wolverine's son, Daken, posing as Wolverine, Bullseye, posing as Hawkeye, McGargan, well, I guess it's Mac Gargan, not Mick Gargan.
McGargan.
It's not a sandwich.
That's all right.
Mac Gargan, formerly the Scorpion, who at this point in time was host to the Venom symbiote. And then Norman himself, who is in a set of Iron Man armor and going by the name of Iron Patriot. Did you read any of this at the time? Or
I did not.
Did you hear about this at the time?
I did, and a lot of what so I never really checked it out at the time it was out, but I did kind of go back and listen to some synopsises of this on YouTube and kind of get caught up on it, because at this point, I'd been out of comics forever. I missed Civil War at the time it was out, Secret Invasion at the time it was out, and Dark Reign at the time it was out.
Yeah.
So I kind of went back years later and checked it out, but it always kind of appealed to me, the fact of them having villains posing as the actual Avengers. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, this series was part of the Dark Reign branding at the time, which that was a line-wide thing following Secret Invasion. Dark Reign was not an event, but it was rather a tonal shift in the status quo for the Marvel Universe, similar to the Initiative that we saw branded across the Marvel books following the Civil War. Mm-hmm. It definitely was, like the name implied, a darker time within the Marvel Universe.
Right.
Now let's dive into the issue itself. And I want to start with the cover. This cover is paying homage to the cover of New Avengers, which was the first comic we talked about on this show. Mm-hmm. We have the team itself. They're kind of standing in the shadow. We've got a bolt of lightning that's lighting up the background behind them. It's a really simple yet striking cover that I think successfully conveys the darker tone that this book is looking to take. Mm-hmm. But like most first issues, it's funny because one of my big pet peeves with comic covers, and what I found is, as we talk about first issues, you don't really get a lot of this from first issue covers, is I really like comic book covers that give you a sense of what the story is about, like what's going to happen on the inside.
Yeah.
I absolutely cannot stand comic book covers that have nothing to do with the story that's inside. I am a little forgiving of that when it comes to first issues, because there it's just like, here's the guy, here's the team, and that's kind of what we get from here. Now, let's talk about the issue itself. And unlike last week's Deathstroke comic that we talked about, which was a rather brisk read, this one was a bit more, it took a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I would. Yes.
All right. Let's talk about the issue itself. Now, the very first page is a quick recap of the events leading to this issue. This includes the Secret Scroll invasion, the Hood organizing heroes and villains to fight together, Norman Osborn taking out the Skrull Queen, which is kind of what propelled him to be the big hero of that event, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, taking the blame and getting stripped of his role as leader of Avengers, Norman Osborn replacing Tony, and all the while, Norman has been secretly meeting with a cabal of villains, which includes Doctor Doom. And that's kind of where the story actually opens up. At the castle of Morgana Le Fay, back in 690 AD, Le Fay is standing at a steaming cauldron, citing an incantation to show her Victor Von Doom. She refers to him as her betrayer. An image appears within the cauldron. It's a meeting of the aforementioned cabal. This club includes Norman Osborn, Doom, Loki, the Hood, Namor, and the White Queen. Norman is about to explain to the group that this is a new day. Outside of Avengers Tower, kind of taking place today, we've got Norman as the Iron Patriot. He's introducing his new iteration of Avengers to the world. We see Marvel Boy, Sentry, Miss Marvel, Iron Patriot, Ares, Wolverine, Hawkeye, and Spider-Man. We flash back to a week ago. Norman is standing alongside a docked helicarrier. He's approached by Victoria Hand, who he had called. Norman is appointing her deputy director of his new organization, which is replacing S.H.I.E.L.D. It is called Hammer. I don't believe Hammer stands for anything.
I don't think so.
Norman instructs Hand that one of her first lists of to-dos is to come up with a whatever words his new hammer will stand for. It is a, what do they call it? It's a backronym.
Yes.
So it's
where
like
they come up with the acronym first and what it means later.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
Now, similar to how S.H.I.E.L.D. stood for Strategic Hazard Intervention Espionage Logistics Directorate. Now, I think that acronym has changed over the years as well. Because originally it was Supreme Headquarters International Espionage and Law Enforcement Division. So it's changed. But anyway, like I said, in the MCU, I think it even had a different name.
Yeah, I think it did.
But along with the backronym, Hand is also tasked with helping form a new Avengers team. Norman wants a list of all S.H.I.E.L.D. operatives. He wants Hydra agents, AIM operatives, heroes, criminals, etc., everyone. He lists off a litany of other to-do items for Hand. Now, she doesn't agree with the soft views on terrorism from Fury and Stark. Norman assures her that he basically gives her his word that those words won't be used to describe him. He's not like those other guys. Hand, with a sly grin, asks, what about Maria Hill? We then cut to Thunderbolts Mountain, where Maria Hill is called into Norman's office. Norman doesn't waste any time telling her that S.H.I.E.L.D. is no more and she's out of a job. Maria is not surprised and tells Norman that when he crashes and burns, which he will, she will be there when it happens and she'll be laughing her ass off. As Hill leaves, Bullseye enters the office. Bullseye sits down, and Norman commends the assassin on his work during the battle during Secret Invasion. Norman wants to expand their relationship. Bullseye is weary of Norman, screwing him over, but Norman states that he's not doing that at all. He tells Bullseye they're moving to New York. Bullseye asks, "What's in New York?" To which Norman replies, "Avengers Tower." We then cut to 5 days ago at Avengers Tower. Miss Marvel, aka Carol Danvers, she arrives to see Norman waiting. He asks if she's reporting for duty as leader of the Avengers, and she's like, "No, I report to Tony Stark." Norman reminds her that Tony is no longer here, and this tower is no longer Tony's home. Carol says she resigns from the Avengers then. Norman states that she's not just a registered superhero, but also she's in the military, and he can order her to take her position. She repeats that she is resigning. Norman says she's under arrest, and though Carol exclaims, "No one worth a damn would side with you," here comes Ares and Sentry. They enter the room. And Carol literally says, "What the fuck are you two doing?" Ares has sided with Norman because there are battles that must be fought. And as for Sentry, he quietly says that Norman is helping him, though he doesn't answer when Carol asks him how. Carol tries to explain to her two former teammates that they're making a mistake, but it's no use. Carol refuses to work for Norman, and she takes off through a window. Sentry asks if he should go after her, and Norman tells him not to worry about it now and that there are more Miss Marvels where that came from. We cut back to Thunderbolts Mountain, where we see Moonstone meditating. She's interrupted by Norman. He tosses her a Miss Marvel costume and says they're going to New York. She asks why she can't just be Moonstone. He tells her that Moonstone stays at the mountain under armed guard. Miss Marvel gets a penthouse in New York. He then says, "Welcome to the Avengers." We cut to a Skrull POW getting tossed into a cell. A voice from within calls out, asking him to shapeshift into Spider-Man. After the Skrull turns himself into Spider-Man, he turns around to see a massive Venom standing behind him. The Skrull cries out as he gets devoured by the hungry symbiote. Norman approaches the cell and asks the guards outside if Venom had just been fed. Norman enters the cell. Venom tells him that Skrulls make him gassy. Norman takes out a small package or vial of something and tells Venom to take it. Venom is weary of being tricked by Norman, but Norman assures him it's no trick. Norman tosses the object into Venom's mouth, and the monster begins to violently lash about in uncontrollable convulsions. When that stops, Norman asks how he feels. Venom has transformed from the monstrous-looking Skrull Eater we just saw and into a form that is identical to the black-costumed Spider-Man. Venom tells Norman he takes back every bad thing he's ever said about him. Well, almost everything. We then cut to New Orleans 4 days ago. Norman and Ares are waiting in a pizza place of some sort when Daken, Wolverine's son, walks in to meet them. Victoria Hand is at the booth as well. Daken asks if he's there for a job, and Norman makes a remark about Daken's father. Ares laughs at the idea of a woman allowing Wolverine to climb on top of her, which pisses Daken off, and he pops his claws. Norman kind of intercedes and offers Daken the job. We then cut to 3 days ago at a maximum security penitentiary called The Cube. In a large cell, extra-dimensional Kree warrior Novar is sitting alone. Norman enters and tells him he wants Norvar to be Captain Marvel. Looking at an image of the old-school Avengers team, Norman asks Victoria Hand what they're missing from the team. While Victoria lists off a number of items, none are what Norman has in mind. Ares points out the hardcore team is missing Captain America and Iron Man. Not the heroes themselves necessarily, but the symbolism that they represent, the soldier and the knight. Symbols that people will gather behind. Ghost has arrived for an appointment with Norman. Ghost is like an anarchist that can become intangible, and Norman wants Ghost to help him unlock a door. He has no idea what's behind it. Ghost disappears through the door. Miss Marvel, at this point, comments that he smells badly. Moments later, the door opens up, revealing its secret contents. It is a massive vault full of Iron Man armor suits. We now cut back to this morning. There's a helicopter with Thunderbolts agents and Doctor Doom. They're arriving in Latveria. There is no ground crew, and the place appears to be in ruins. They spot a woman in the distance in the debris. Neither the woman nor Doom speak, but simultaneously they launch a volley of magical energy at one another. We then cut back to Avengers Tower. Now we've got all the Avengers here. They're all revealed. Norman removes his helmet, introducing himself as the Iron Patriot, the leader of the team. He says, "My name is Norman Osborn, and I approve of these Avengers." Next issue, The Avengers versus Morgana Le Fay. Bill, thoughts?
Well, I really like this one. Kind of mentioned it at the beginning, but there is a lot of exposition in this comic.
Mm-hmm.
By no means, though, is it boring. And this probably would have caused me to really wanted to start paying attention to what Marvel's doing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't have that. Hindsight being 2020, I can't go back in time and be like, yeah, I'll pick this up. But artwork looks amazing.
Yep.
In it, and it's Norman Osborn, so I'm gonna echo Maria Hill's thoughts in this. It's gonna go, ass up at some point.
Yeah,
so
100%. I think that, well, a couple things. One is it is a pretty standard first issue formula, but it's a formula that works, right? You've got the problem in the periphery that's kind of rising. You've got the leader who's putting the team together. Each scene is him recruiting a different character. There's not a lot of action in this. I mean, really at all.
Yeah.
But the pacing and the dialogue is really enough to keep you engaged.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think that Bendis has always excelled at, more so than the big action sequences or the big events. It's the dialogue that he's always had a good knack for.
I agree.
And I think a lot of people will give him some flack sometimes about doing a lot of the talking heads things. You don't really have a lot of that here. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of talking, but there's not a lot of just talking heads necessarily. Right. I really like the scenes with Maria Hill. I've always enjoyed her as a character anyway. And I like the scene with Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers. I thought those scenes were really well done. Mm-hmm. I think that Norman is convincing in this new role.
Yeah.
It's funny to see this character's continued evolution. Because are you familiar with what Norman's doing right now in comics? So Norman right now it's actually a little jarring when I was reading this. Mm-hmm. And then you read Amazing Spider-Man Today, where Norman is trying to not just atone for his past misdeeds, but he's actually filling in as Spider-Man for Peter Parker while Peter Parker's out in space.
Yeah.
It almost reads like two completely different characters to me.
Right.
I like this version, this Dark Avengers version, this manipulating, conniving, very intelligent Norman Osborn much better than Norman simping for Peter Parker's approval in being Spider-Man. I don't really care for that.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed how Bullseye's portrayed here.
I always liked Bullseye.
Bullseye's always cool. Yeah. Ares and Sentry, they don't do much here, but I like Sentry. I've always been a Sentry fan. Ares is pretty cool. I'd completely forgotten that Mac Gargan, aka the Scorpion, was ever Venom until I went back and revisited this. I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
Was there any standout characters for you?
I will say there's two of them, and it's because I'm a longtime Spider-Man fan. One of the reasons why I went back and sort of got caught up on what was going on in comics was the end of the Clone Saga. They bring back Norman Osborn, and I'm like, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Because at that point he'd been dead, missing, whatever for years, and it was cool to see him not only come back but like lead his own team of supervillains. I also I don't know that Mac Gargan as Venom was ever well received. I don't know. I've heard mixed things on that. I think he works great as Venom.
Yeah.
And it's really cool, like the scene of him just being this hulking monster and then just slimming down to be like Spider-Man's size.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah, that was neat. In terms of like the artwork, I've always enjoyed Deodato's artwork.
Mm-hmm.
It has always had a very cinematic feel to it. Like it's very photorealistic.
Yeah.
I dig that, especially with this type of a story. I think it fits really well.
Mm-hmm.
There are some things I do find distracting when a character is rendered after a particular actor, i.e., Ultimate Nick Fury looking just like Sam Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Or in this case, Norman Osborn looking like Tommy Lee Jones.
Yes.
That I don't care for.
Yeah.
Because then I have a tendency to want to read the character in that actor's voice, and I don't think Tommy Lee Jones's voice works for Norman Osborn.
I don't at all.
And so that was something I did struggle with a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, I've always associated Norman Osborn's voice in the comics the same way it is in the Spider-Man animated series,
Mm-hmm.
because it's very like business-like kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then after, I don't know, I kind of flip back and forth between that and Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, Willem Dafoe I thought was a pretty good Norman Osborn.
I think so.
Who do you think would be a really good Norman Osborn today?
Ooh. Let's see. That's a tough question. Because you have to have that like gravitas to you to be like not only this like super sophisticated, smart businessman who could run the company himself if he really wanted to, but also have like that tinge of psychosis in the back of his mind.
Yeah. So I think it's got to be somebody who is still fit. You know what I mean? Like they got to be trim, right?
Yes.
Like because some of the actors I'm like, oh man, he'd be a cool Norman Osborn. And they're like, no, he would look really awkward in a Green Goblin costume.
Right.
If they went that route.
God, that's something I'd really have to think about.
It's a tough question.
It's a tough one.
I guess anyone out there who's watching this, who would you cast as Norman Osborn today? Because I mean, we don't have a Norman Osborn right now in the MCU.
We don't.
I mean, we did have Willem Dafoe reprise his role in that last Spider-Man movie, but that was different Norman Osborn.
Well,
right?
and then that whatever animated series it was that Disney Plus just came out with of Spider-Man, I didn't think that really worked for him, even though it does make more sense that a person of color would wear cornrows.
Yeah, and I don't think you necessarily even have to.
I've kind of liked
go that route.
I've liked the portrayals of Norman where he doesn't have the cornrows because I always thought that looked stupid.
Yeah.
God, that's a really tough question.
All right, think on it.
Okay.
Because I'm sure the conversation will come up again at some point.
I'm going to think about it, and I'm going to send Josh a message, and he's going to put it in here right now.
Insert name here.
Yes.
Now it's funny because between Red Hulk, One World Under Doom, which we'll be talking about, and this, we are getting our full of Doctor Doom over these next few weeks. It's as if this was in anticipation of an upcoming Marvel movie, but really it's not. This is all coincidental.
Right.
Any other thoughts on the book itself or the story itself?
No, I don't think so. All
right, let's talk a little bit about what came next. This series ran for 16 issues. I do have it in a collected edition. If you do want to read the rest of it, Bill, I can get that to you. Okay. Throughout that run, it tied into Dark Avengers, Uncanny X-Men. There was a crossover there called Utopia, which I don't recall anything about, and I don't even think those 2 issues are not in that collection. I think it's in a separate collection. and I think I've read Utopia, but I don't really remember anything about it. Anyway, it also ties into the Siege event, in which that's when Osborn launches an all-out assault on Asgard. Though I was pretty burnt out on events at this time, or at that time. I mean, I liked Secret Invasion well enough, but by the time you get into, like, you've got Utopia, you've got what was the Siege event that I referenced, that was really kind of like wearing me down on Marvel Comics overall, because it was just event after event after event.
Right.
And so I was really burnt out on events at that time. And it wasn't too, if I recall with the Siege event, it wasn't too bad. I think it did have some cool bits in it. Like, if I recall correctly, that Siege event is where, like, Soldier Field is destroyed. The Sentry rips Ares into two, like, lengthwise. You know, he likes to rip people in half. We've talked about that.
Oh, yeah.
Osborn's madness is revealed to the world, and he ends up getting arrested. It's funny because, like, under the Iron Patriot costume, he's actually seemed to, like, have painted his face green. Like, that's kind of how off the rocker he goes.
Yeah.
U.S. Agent, we've talked about this. U.S. Agent gets dismembered, but then he gets better, of course, because we talked about that in that U.S. Agent episode we did.
Yeah.
Loki gets killed in that event. The Void takes over the Sentry fully, and then he ends up getting tossed into the sun by Thor. There's a lot that went on. Went on now that I think about it. Siege brought the Dark Reign era to an end, and then that brought us into the Heroic Age. Another volume of Dark Avengers came about in 2012, and this was when the Thunderbolts title was retitled Dark Avengers with issue 175, and that ran through issue 190, which that was then the end of that series. I do have those issues, but admittedly I need to go back and revisit them because I don't really remember any of that.
Yeah.
Volume 1 of New Avengers, or rather, yeah, Volume 1 of the Dark Avengers was collected with 14 of those 16 issues, as I said. Plus, there was an annual, and like I said, those 2 Utopia tie-ins were omitted from that. Now, let's go ahead and rate this issue. Would you buy the next, at least read it, skip it, or rather be assigned to clean up after Venom's lunch?
I'd probably buy the next one. Now, with the hindsight of this, and there being like a trade and everything like that of it, I'd probably buy the trade.
Yep.
Just so I could get caught up on the whole story, because I hate being blame it on like having streaming services and stuff like that. I hate not being able to binge something once I get into it.
Yeah.
So I'd probably do that. I'd
Yep.
definitely read the next
Trade
one.
weight though.
Trade weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a read for me. I liked the issue well enough all the way through. The one thing that made it a read versus a buy is that there's nothing at the end of this when it comes to Doctor Doom and Morgana Le Fay that screams at me to buy the next issue. I don't really care about either of those characters. I'm not really big on magic in the Marvel Universe as a whole.
Right.
I'm not a Doctor Doom fan. There's a lot of people that are Doctor Doom fans out there. I'm not necessarily one of them.
Yeah.
And so that part of it, I'm just like, eh. Like, I want to see it's cool to see the team, and I want to see what happens next, but I'm not going to wouldn't run out and buy it.
I think I would buy it just for the hope that I would see the team in action.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Cool. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here. This has been another edition of the Number One Comics Podcast. Special thanks to everyone at the Field of Geeks Network for making this happen. Thanks to Raven X for the theme song. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just look up Field of Geeks. You can find us there. We are on, is it Facebook? It's called Facebook. We are on Facebook. Man, that was an moment. We are on Facebook at the Number One Comics Podcast. Like, subscribe, give us a follow.
Yeah.
And that's going to do it. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.